Good afternoon. We are going to get started. I hope that everyone had a very enjoyable and safe weekend. I was sharing with a couple of board members before we got started that I'm not feeling my best today, and I think I realized that it's not because of some physical thing. It's once again waking up and seeing the news, another mass shooting, and as Pastor said, they're just relentless. I mean, that just appears to be where we are right now, and I think it can just get to a point where it makes you feel physically ill. But I'm glad to see everyone today. Hope you had a festive 4th of July. I need to share that. Remember, Reverend Tatum indicated at our last meeting that he would be unable to be here today. I heard from Kyle Strickland earlier that he can't be with us today, and I'm hoping that Dr. Jones will appear. At this time, the chair would entertain a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting. So move. Second? Second, okay, thank you. Any questions, concerns? Then all indicate your passage by raising your hands or hand. Thank you. I think that in terms of the statute that applies to us, this is actually the last training that the board must have. And so I would like to ask Commander Lang to come forward, and you're going to start our de-escalation training.
Madam Chair, thank you again for having us with you today. As usual, I have brought the experts that know far more about this kind of training. So I've asked Officer Dave Freetag and Officer Catherine Horvath to join me today. So the Division of Police has recently sent them to more de-escalation train the trainer, so allowing them to teach all of us. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to them and let them get started with their presentation.
Thank you. Good afternoon. So to kind of begin, as you can see on the board there, it says Introduction to ICAT. ICAT stands for Integrated Communication and Tactics. This is a fairly large program that's been rolled out nationally. It was created by PERF, Police Executive Research Firm. There are, I'm going to hit it later on, but I think there's 620 some agencies that are currently using this program. At this date right now, the whole division has been trained in our ICAT program, minus the brand new recruit class that just started, and they will be trained as we go, and every recruit class from here on out. So we're in the process of implementing this as we go. I'm not sure how to click forward here.
Just have to eyeball.
Just how are you?
Yeah,
So just go like this.
Colleen, and she knows how to do it.
All right, so if we just go ahead and go next. So we're giving police officers tools for diffusing critical incidents, especially those that do not involve weapons. And this is a big deal because oftentimes we come in contact with people who don't have weapons but are emotionally disturbed or who are elevated in their emotions. So we want to be able to give them the tools to not escalate, but to be able to de-escalate that situation. Like I said, it's created by PERF. That's the best I can do to click right there. That's all I got. Go back for me one. There we go. So some of our skills are already in place. We have some specialized units like our MCR unit, like our CIT officers that have some of these skills, but may not have received all of this training that we're going to specifically or that we have given to them. So these skills that we are giving them, some new verbiage that we've given them, and some of the ideas that we are passing on helps them with that. So not only are the current CIT and MCR officers being enhanced, our current officers will also have more training than they've had before. So when ICAT was created, it wasn't just PERF. They also went to the University of Cincinnati, who has a very good criminal justice program. University of Cincinnati and Louisville Metro Police kept a lot of stats, and they kind of all developed this together with PERF. They pilot tested it at 7 agencies, and it does say 620 agencies are in use now. That is a little dated. There's probably 20 more that have since been added to that number. It's continuously updated. It was last updated in November of 2021. So we have 7 modules in ICAT. Our first module is our introduction. And essentially, when we train officers in ICAT, each module is approximately a half hour to an hour. They have a lot of videos, and there's a lot of interactive discussion with the officers that occur. So after we show them the videos, we kind of give a Q&A according to what they would do to their current training and what would happen. So the introduction to ICAT is basically explaining to the officers what ICAT is and where we go with it. Our second module is the critical decision-making model. You'll see that as we go on here in just a moment. Crisis recognition. This is a big one that we just hit this past year, explaining to the officers that when someone is in crisis that we need to slow down. We take our time, we use distance and cover. And the longer that we create the time that we can create, the more likely of a positive outcome for us if we can create more time to bring their emotions back to normal. Our tactical communication, we integrated that module into all of our modules that we had because we believe that communication is so important. The suicide by cop is one that we hit very heavily. We actually you have that with weapons or with guns and without. ICAT mostly focuses on without weapons, but oftentimes there's common verbiage, common language, and common actions that will be seen in the suicide by cop actions. And so we want to get those out there to the current officers, especially to the street officers who would come across the suicide by cop first. Operational tactics gives officers an opportunity to do something different. For example, the easiest way to explain it is maybe in years past, kind of old school police thinking is there's what you call a line in the sand. Nobody can do this or else. And operational tactics gives you an idea of what they call a tactical retreat, that sometimes you may need to reposition yourself, you may need to reposition your team in order to have a positive outcome. And step up, step in. This is the last one of the modules. The step up, step in can be different ways. It can be if you have a fellow officer who is maybe doing something wrong, that you have to step up and intervene in that situation. Other times, it may be a situation where somebody needs to step up and be a leader and take charge of the situation because sometimes groupthink can take charge of a situation, and that groupthink isn't always positive. So if someone can step up and step in and become a leader of the situation in a positive role, that's where we're going with that. So that is an overview of all 7 of the ICAT modules. And so we'll kind of go through them now, each one individually. Go ahead, click for me there. So as you guys can read this, I don't need to read it for you really, but as it explains, as a process, through the process, we reminded each other that we are looking to give officers more tools, more options, not less. That is a barrier for us to overcome as trainers because when we say the word de-escalation to current officers, oftentimes they think, well, you're taking away what I can do. And that's not the case. We want to give them more options, the ability to do more than they currently can do. And so as he said, I'm sorry, just go back one more. There you go. I looked at you, that was my fault. So as ICAT would not take anything away, it would seek to make these incidents safer for everyone involved. So as you can see, it says incidents in which a subject in crisis is unarmed or armed with something other than a weapon. And we oftentimes include a blunt object or a knife included in other than a weapon. You can jump in anytime you want. Okay. So 40% of fatal OIS is officer-involved shootings, or the subject is unarmed or armed with a weapon other than their own. And that's something we're trying to eliminate. So there you go, other than a firearm, includes a blunt object, knife. So like I explained earlier, Louisville Metro kept a lot of our stats. So we'll take some of those, you can.
So about, according to Louisville Metro, about 28% reduction in the use of force incidents. And although we have a very low use of force incident, it's never a bad goal to reduce that even further. A reduction in citizen injuries. So these are, again, the type of things that we're looking to also capitalize on. And then a really big reduction in officer injuries. So we know that each officer is an investment by the city and an investment by the community. And so, again, a great goal to have there. So that research shows us that Louisville was able to reduce those 3 key factors. And, again, we're looking to do the same thing.
All right, it says ICAT leads to changes in behavior associated with use of force. Yes, because other studies have shown it makes the officers think about their situations differently. Even since we've given this training, I've had people that have said to me, hey, I was in a situation and I remember that video that you shown and we just simply took our time with it. So it does change officers' behavior. So there again, shows studies behavior. Sorry, the light's right in my eyes there. Go ahead. Says the research team is confident that changes in use of force and subsequent reactions in citizen and officers' injuries correspond to the timing of ICAT across various police divisions. So we hopefully will start to see that with us now that we finished our training. Our training was finished, I believe, Memorial Day around that time. So the end of May is when we finished the division's training.
And let me also say that before we started the formal ICAT modules, I think it was the year previous that we had started with some different communication pieces that went out both live and as electronic training to all officers, so something that they had to complete. That hit on some of the more nuanced communication strategies, typically things that are used in the skills with hostage negotiators. So it's not that you're convincing someone to come out or what have you, it's communicating with that person and de-escalating that situation. And so we front-loaded this ICAT training with that communication piece. That also is something that now every member of the division has had before ICAT, and also the recruits get that within their first 2 weeks of starting the academy, and we hit that with them, if you will, several times throughout their time in the academy, where we start with that communication piece and then follow up later with the ICAT.
All right, as I said earlier, CIT officers were like, hey, this is something we already do, and even having the CIT training, the ICAT program was something different for many of them, many aspects of ICAT. Our use of force continuum versus proportionality of the crime. We talk about that several times in ICAT. This is a big one. We don't have all day. Officers want to hurry up and get to the next run, take care of the next run, and move forward, move on. The dispatchers want to clear the board and get everything done and get it done as soon as possible. In our training part of it, we tell them is you get paid by the hour. You do each run right, and you take your time with each run. You consider this, you may go on a run, and this may be that person's worst moment of their life, and you have to take that into consideration every time you go on a run. Most people don't just call the police because it's fun. When we show up, it can be the worst moment of their life, so we have to consider that when we go on these runs.
And certainly officers have said, we don't have all day. Okay, I get that we don't have all day to handle one run, but then the conventional thinking has also been, man, I don't want to have to come back here. And so, all right, let's take our time, let's slow it down, let's back up a little bit, solve it correctly, do the right things, and then we don't have to come back again, that type of thinking, so ways of challenging that.
And again, I mentioned earlier about retreating. Retreating has been a bad word in policing for a long time. It's like you can't retreat. You have to win this situation. Well, if we change the name to tactical repositioning, it may not sound like much, but you're telling them you can take up a different spot. You can reposition yourself and your team tactically and therefore continue your lines of communication, keep those lines of communication open, and then hopefully have a positive outcome. Not having a plan B. So again, this goes in with our taking time. We take time on the runs. As an officer, we train our probationary officers, we train our recruits. You get dispatched to run, you think about what you're going to do on the way to that run. Oftentimes you get there and it gets flipped. It gets turned upside down on you because that run is nothing like you expected. And so not only are you thinking and planning out, having your plan ready, have an alternate plan. What else can you do? How can you make this run take a little bit more time for yourself to think about it? And again, I've mentioned that I think 3 or 4 times. We want to get away from the drawing the line in the sand. We want to be able to have the plan B and to be able to tactically reposition yourselves. And not taking action is a failure to act. That's a tough one. That's a tough one because as officers, you're like, I have to do something. I want to do something. I have to fix this. We explain to them that you're a Band-Aid. You're a Band-Aid for the moment. And we hopefully can get them resources for the future. But we're there to Band-Aid that moment. And sometimes no action might be the best. You've went there, you've talked to them, and that's the best you can do for that day. You were the Band-Aid for that minute. There we go. The most important thing is that I go home safely. We have all heard that many times. And we want to change that to the most important thing is that we all go home safely. So in these situations here that we're talking about with ICAT, where you have a suspect who is unarmed but maybe threatening you with a gun, with a knife, and you're tactically in a position where you're safe, we want to make sure we all go home safely by slowing it down. Winning at all costs. What is a win? That's what we changed the idea to. We asked them, what is a win? Is a win winning that situation? It's kind of taking your ego out of it. And the win is getting the people the help they need, or being the Band-Aid for that minute that needs to be had, but not necessarily taking someone to jail. That's not your win. So the winning at all costs is a tough thing to overcome, but it's also something we're trying to overcome. So critical decision-making. We have the critical decision-making model, our crisis recognition, tactical communication, operational tactics, stepping up, stepping in, and scenario-based training. This is something that we do often. We do it throughout recruit training, and we also do it annually at our in-service trainings too. That's something that most other departments don't do. We're lucky enough to have the size and the facility to be able to do scenario-based training every year, so we do have that. So it integrates these skills applied to non-firearm critical thinking incidents. So our focus, we focus on our patrol response. That's basically what this is from. You are the first person called to the scene. Somebody calls, you get there and you have to use the skills that we give you. We integrate all of our skills. It's physical, emotional, and legal. That matters too. So critical decision making. As you can see, this here is basically, it's kind of the model that we've always used in our FTO, our Field Training Officer Program. And as you go around, number one, you collect information. And as you can see, each arrow goes back to the middle. It says ethics, values, proportionality, which is proportionality of the crime, and sanctity of human life, which is bolded. So every step of the way, you should always refer back to the middle. As we go on, you have assess the situation, threats, and risks. Consider your police powers, agency powers, and policy. Going across, we have identify options, determine the best course of action. This is where you decide to do something. You've taken everything else into consideration. You have to do something, so you act, review, and sometimes reassess. And each of these steps, as we go, kicks back to before. Maybe drawing the line in the sand. You have to tactically reposition yourself. All of these go back here, at all times referring back to the middle of the ethics, values, proportionality of the crime, and the sanctity of human life. And oftentimes you go through that, and guess what you have to do again? Collect more information and start all over again. So again, this is a base model we use for our FTO program, but this is what ICAT uses for the ICAT, for officers. So our crisis recognition. So it could be an episode of mental or emotional distress. It's creating instability or danger for themselves or for others, disruptive to community, friends, family, or self. So emotional versus rational thinking. When emotions are high, rational thinking is low. So a big section of ICAT is to get the person, the subject, back to rational thinking. So the longer time that we take, the better chance we can get them to think critically again. So the longer time we take, we bring them back to balance there in the middle, where emotions are high, rational thinking is low. Sometimes it's caused by precipitating events. Their perception of that event, they have failed coping skills or poor coping skills, and it results in a breakdown of their control, their inability to respond appropriately, and they feel overwhelmed. So they need help. It can impact them or public safety, and it's our job. It is the police job to do that. When you're called, you're the patrol officer, you're the one who's in charge of taking control of that situation and trying to be that Band-Aid for the moment. All the time reflecting on the mission, values, ethics, and sanctity of human life. So I apologize. This is the one that does have sound. This is from Asheville, North Carolina. It came from one of the trainers of the training I went to for this event. This fella here, it's going to be hard to see maybe in the light. I think you'll be able to see it, though. He's inside. He's having some emotional problems. The officers, they do a little bit of what you call pre-gaming. The guy's threatening himself with a knife. He has a big butcher knife. And the officers talk to each other. Says, you're lethal, I'm non-lethal. So they have a taser involved and a gun. And they talk to the guy. And you'll see what happens. And you're going to meet Joey and Steve. Joey and Steve are the same person, but you'll see what happens. So if you can push play here, ma'am. Does it not work? Oh, no. There it is. So the officers are walking up to his house. They know him. They're here frequently. They said that if he does not call every couple of days, they actually check on him because they're worried about him if he hasn't called. So there's 2 officers present. We're watching one officer's body cam. The other officer's off to the corner there, as you can see.
Hey, Joey? Steve? Hey, could you put that knife down, Steve? Come on, Steve, take that knife down, please. Hey, you remember me? It's Officer... Okay? Hey, Joey?
He put the knife to his neck if you can't see in the light.
Steve, talk to me. I want to talk to you, but I can't talk to you with that knife up there like that. Okay?
I'll let you talk to Joey for a half hour.
Okay, well, can you put that knife down?
When Joe either run, I will let him do whatever he wants.
Okay, well, let me talk to Joey then, please. Okay, Joey, can you walk out here to me? Come on, Joey. Come on, Joey. You got your Bible in your hand? Got your Bible in your hand? Okay. You got anything else on you, Joey? Okay, keep your hands where I can see them. Okay, I'm gonna put you in handcuffs and so for our safety, yours and mine and everybody else's, okay? All right, work with me here.
Okay,
You see the other hand?
so they cuff him up. They did a lot of good there. It may not seem like much to a lot of folks, but you would have officers who would go through the threshold of the door. You'd have officers say, he's got a knife, tase him, tase him, tase him. You'd have all sorts of different reactions. Our goal is to get the officers to create that time and distance, or create the distance. So they have a barrier. The barrier right there is the threshold. They're both on the opposite sides of that threshold of the door. They're talking to him. It creates a little bit more time. And it would say, my name's Joey. No, it's Steve. You talk to Steve. And the officer goes along with it. Okay, then Joey, can you drop the knife for me? He talks to him. And then instead of rushing in and grabbing a hold of him, he calmly walks him out. This is more part of our training that we do. Then as he walks him out, he says, I'm going to put you in handcuffs for your safety and mine. He tells him exactly what he's going to do. All of that is part of our training in ICAT and in crisis recognition. These officers both did a fantastic job. Again, this is from Asheville, North Carolina. They had been through the ICAT program, and that's basically a textbook version of ICAT. So here's our person in crisis. You have mental health symptoms, physical or exertional conditions, situational stressors. It could be substance abuse or misuse. All of those, sometimes a combination or oftentimes a combination of more than one of those can lead to a person in crisis. So our tactical communication.
I can take this one.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, so we looked at the basics of all good communication. And the first one is that the majority of time, people need to be respected, but they just want to be heard, right? It's the typical one person who's at a store or a house or a business or what have you, refusing to leave, and they're still there when we get there. And what we've tried to impress upon new officers and recruits and what seasoned officers already know is that person just wants to have their story heard. And so we hammer that point home. They want to have that feeling that they're being heard, they're being respected. They would rather be asked than be told. And so part of the communication piece that we hit with the recruits and that we front-loaded before ICAT was how to rephrase things so it becomes that person's idea as opposed to my idea. So how to rephrase those. When the person believes it's their idea, then they're more likely to buy in. And it's just a simple flip, but it's not a way that most people communicate. Anytime an officer feels himself or herself saying, I need or I want, that's a negotiation and we treat it as such, right? And so we try and flip that script so it becomes that other person's idea. Again, they have that desire to know why. Why do I have to leave? Why is this going on? Why, what have you? And the explanation, as Officer Freitag discussed, I'm going to put you in handcuffs for my safety and yours. So it's that explanation piece and then an action that goes with it, and so there's no surprises. They prefer to have options rather than threats. Anyone who's got kids understands this. You don't ask the child if they want to have some Tylenol. You ask them, do they want to take it with the little cup or the little, spoon? It's a foregone conclusion. And in that way, like a child goes, oh, I have options. I feel good about this. And so we've tried to teach our officers to I need this, right? You don't say it to the other person, but you give them the options because it's a foregone conclusion that what it is that we need to do to solve the situation, you have options on how we're going to get there. And again, people want to have that second chance. We hear that a lot. So, okay, I may have messed this up, but how can I re-up? How can I kind of save the day, if you will? And we give them that opportunity, again, through communication. It's so simple, but it's very different than most people will communicate. So the 2 guiding principles, it's not to diagnose or treat or solve any underlying issues, right? If that's part of why they're having such a bad day, that person is having such a bad day, then yeah, we identify that, but we're not going to get into the causes and treat and diagnose, right? We're just trying to get through, as Officer Freitag said, put that Band-Aid on, stabilize the situation, diffuse it, make it safe for everybody when that's feasible. So that 3-phase approach. First, always making sure the scene is safe as soon as possible, stabilizing the person in crisis, and then begin the problem-solving process. We bring in other resources where that's possible and where that's practical. I wanted to also go back to one other thing, not necessarily on this slide, but the difference between, it came up in the video, the difference between a threat and threatening. Someone can certainly be a threat, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're actively threatening. And that's kind of a little bit of a paradigm shift for officers, especially if they've been on quite some time. A person with a knife is certainly a threat. A person with a club or a baseball bat or a wrench or a brick, you name it, that person is certainly a threat. But that is very different than presently threatening, right? It's a description versus an action. And so we try to also make sure that officers have that distinction.
All right, so suicide by cop. Again, like I explained, it's something we said we hit really heavy in our training this year. Oftentimes there's common characteristics: kill me, shoot me. They express a willingness to die. They appear depressed or in crisis. They're not behaving like a typical criminal offender. They behave aggressively, maybe behave aggressively towards the police, ramming a police cruiser, things like that. They're different rather than trying to flee. They exhibit strange or damaging behaviors. Mental health issues, medication could cause that, of course. History of PTSD could be involved. How long has there been a serious problem is something we try to get to, asking them or the others that are involved in the situation, caretakers, anybody we can contact. Is there a substance abuse history? Recent events that precipitated the call, if we can get a background on the situation also. And is there any previous suicide attempts? We try to get the officers to negotiate with them. Is there anything that you could be hopeful or optimistic about? Oftentimes you hear the officers in the videos that we have talk about, kids. Do you have any kids, parents, depending on the age of the person, to try to get them something to be hopeful about, to look forward to. So any topic should be avoided. We talk about hot button topics. If something that brought them to that situation or that suicidal ideation, we stay away from that topic. So we got to make sure, you also have to make sure that they are safe first, of course, and then they should react and become proactive, taking care of the situation. Operational tactics, we've hit this a few times already a little bit. Using the critical decision-making model, of course. We move on to our tactical repositioning we've talked about, not drawing that line in the sand, getting away from that mentality. There's your threat versus threatening you just hit, perfect. Key things to know is step in to take before you get to the scene. That's making your mental notes on your arrival, creating a distance between the subject and the officer. We've talked about distance a couple times with you guys today. The reactionary gap is something we haven't really discussed with you guys. We won't really have time to today, but a reactionary gap can vary in officers. The last thing we'll talk about is our step up, step in. There is a video here, and our video does have no time or no sound, so that'll be okay. Intervening before a mistake is made. Oftentimes you can see things happening. Your fellow officers might be making a mistake, and it's intervening before that happens, so not allowing that mistake to happen. Or, like I explained too, if groupthink begins to occur and you have several officers there and nobody really taking charge of the situation, and you see it going the wrong way, stepping up and being the leader in that situation. So it could be an opportunity to exercise leadership, like I just said, taking ownership of challenging situations. If you're a senior officer, make it yours. Make it yours and teach the younger folks how to do it right.
On that note, stepping up when a situation is going poorly doesn't necessarily mean that an officer is going down a path that's counterproductive for the situation. It could just be an officer is stuck and has lost, like, maybe their train of thought or where to go next. It's not uncommon to see and for us to have suggested that if you have one person who's that that contact person with someone in crisis, have a second set of ears sitting right behind you. That person may be able to pick up on some additional details because they're not thinking of what to say next, and may be able to feed that primary officer some additional thoughts on how to do that. So again, step up and step in is not necessarily just for that incident where an officer is maybe going down the wrong path or the group think is going poorly. It's also just a way of making sure we get enough brains working through a call to have the best outcome.
So here's our video. I'll give you a little background. This is the last video of the day. This is from Florida. The sergeant in this video has approximately 20 years on the department. The sergeant has a handcuffed prisoner in the back of the vehicle. Actually, the officers do. The sergeant opens the door. I took the sound out. There's a lot of profanity in there. The sergeant is getting ready to mace him. Tell him, you're going to listen to my officers. You're not going to kick the door. He's getting ready to mace him. Well, it's against policy pretty much everywhere to mace handcuffed prisoners unless there's extenuating circumstances. So a female officer with 2 years on goes up, grabs the sergeant by his belt, and pulls him back. She said, I knew that we are not allowed to mace handcuffed prisoners. I was trying to save him from himself. He turns around, and I'll let you see the rest of the video. So here's the sergeant. He's in the back of the car, as you can see. There's the female officer. She runs over, grabs him by his belt, and pulls him back. So he grabs her by her throat, as you saw, goes back over to the cruiser, says some things to the suspect, and then says, I'll see you in my office in 5 minutes. So that right there, to me, I showed this to the whole division. I said, for a female with 2 years on, that took an awful lot of guts to tell a sergeant with 20 years on, you can't do that. I said, she should be applauded for that. And I had agreement almost across the board. Everybody said, yeah, absolutely. That took a lot of guts. That's really difficult to do. Subsequently, she didn't get in any trouble, of course. The sergeant did get in trouble for this. There's still a lot of pending stuff going on with this. It just happened, I think, I can't read that, November of this last year. So just occurred recently. So something like this is what we tell our officers, too, that something like this may occur. You may have to step up and save yourselves from each other. The sergeant lost his cool, and he would have gotten in trouble for that. He absolutely would have gotten in trouble for that, but she saved him from that. So it's one of the examples of videos that we do show. So in conclusion, we try to get our patrol officers to slow down in any incident. We give them some, obviously we have hours and hours of training on this. We give them tools for communication, have them slow down. A person in crisis is one thing we want to hit big time with these folks, and we want them more likely to get help. So we want our officers to slow down to get them that help that they need, because jail oftentimes is not the best place to get people in crisis help. Better outcome for everyone involved. So our training and our scenarios, we have a lot of scenarios that go on with these too. So our training and our scenarios make officers think critically about getting positive outcomes. Our goal is to bring everyone from being in a highly emotional state back to rational thinking. That's it. Is there any questions?
So I want to,
I'm sorry.
forgive me, Pastor, let me just sum up real quick, and then we'll answer all of your questions. So we've really taken de-escalation training that we have been teaching for years, and we have added to it these statistics that can show officers this is why this is a good thing for you. Because you get hurt less, because people get hurt less, you're getting fewer complaints, which means you're less likely to be violating policy. All of those things are a good thing. Fewer people hurt, fewer people in trouble. These are the reasons that we want to be teaching this de-escalation. So while we have been doing it, ICAT has helped us put it in a complete package, and it has helped us show everyone in the division why it's a positive thing for them. So the name part is new for us, but the fact that we have been doing it in some form for a while now is something that we are grateful that we are able to continue to do. Like Officer Freitag said, because of our size, we can bring everyone in and teach the whole division how to do these things. that not every agency has. So all of this training, this de-escalation in general, is a good thing for everyone, and we're grateful to be able to do it. Sorry.
Yeah, this seems like a great program, but, I guess what I'm struggling with, the fundamental tension point seems to be that we have the wrong people doing this. That is, an officer has how many hours of training to do this in a year? What would be the total amount of training?
We just put them through the first section of this, sir, and it was 4 hours. So they had the 4-hour train-up of this, and then we just started the scenario-based portion of it now, of like 2 weeks ago. So they'll go through some scenarios, trainings here in the fall.
So you've got 4 hours of training, which is better than 0 hours of training, but the kinds of situations that you guys are describing are almost all mental health, suicidal ideation, substance abuse. That's what mental health therapists train on for years. They don't get 4 hours of training to do a little bit of scenario stuff. They do, like years of training and lots of interactions and supervision with this. So I guess my question is, how much are we bringing out social workers into situations in Columbus right now? And do you know what the plan is for the future? Like, how is that working? I mean, like, mental health therapy is like a thing. It's like a real thing. It's not like a 4-hour thing. It's like an actual discipline. So are we injecting in someone other than police officers? How much are we doing it? And do you know what the plan is? I guess I know there was a lot of talk around this a year ago, but I haven't been hearing like what are we doing?
Yeah, so of course that's complicated for us to answer. Our role here is to teach police officers. But I can tell you that the division has, and we kind of threw some acronyms around earlier, but MCR, our Mobile Crisis Response Team, pairs officers with clinicians who are able to respond to these types of runs. And it's fascinating to listen to the radio. You'll hear officers ask, do we have any MCR officers that can come? Because they recognize the value of those folks coming. We could always use more, right? Always.
Maybe I'm asking the wrong people. I don't know if you're able to answer these, like how big of a program is it, or do you have that information, or
5 officers, and we switched recently from using NetCare as our partner for clinicians to using city services from the Department of Public Health. So the system is in a little bit of flux, but they go quite often. But I personally do not have the exact numbers of runs that they have been on.
And like you said, the acronym, the CIT officers, there's quite a bit of CIT officers that receive training twice a year. Again, I'm with you. My degree's in psychology and sociology. I'm with you. Having a little bit of training, once a year is not that big of a deal. But the CIT officers do, I believe it's every 6 months they come in and have a training. So they are getting that training also. This was meant to help supplement the CIT and the MCR and to give the patrol officers who have just our scenario-based training and what they had in the academy something extra. So.
I know that you have social workers that go out there, but I'm very thankful that you also now are teaching officers, which I don't know that you've always done. And I'm very thankful that at this particular time, it seems like you have the upper, whatever it is, the upper echelon seems to be making it easier for officers like the one from Florida to be able to pull that sergeant. That there's an environment now that everyone can step up and and not be afraid to be them, to do the right thing. And so I'm thankful for that. I mean, sure, not every officer is going to be trained to be a social worker or a psychologist, but you need to know at least those 4 hours will be helpful, because social workers aren't going to be, and psychologists aren't going to be going to every call. So you're doing that, which is fantastic. And as long as there's an agenda that is set, that officers can police each other, as that young lady did, that's fantastic. So I think you're really doing great
We
things.
require that of officers. We require that if you see misconduct like that, if you see potential criminal behavior, you are required to step in. And then we talked about scenario-based training. So we do scenarios where all you're told is you are going in this room and it's obvious that an officer is doing something inappropriate, and you don't pass unless you stop that officer from doing it. So it absolutely comes from the chief on down. We believe in it very much. I say many, many times, as trainers and as supervisors, we are responsible to make sure that officers go home safely at night. We are also responsible to make sure that they have a job to come back to in the morning. And what I mean by that is if you are going out there and using force inappropriately, if you are speaking to people inappropriately, you're not going to be able to come back to work tomorrow. So we're going to help you save you from yourself when we have that opportunity, exactly like that officer that did on the screen.
Thank you. How does your ICAT training fit into your current use of force continuum chart?
Very well, actually, because the whole idea of our use of force continuum, and I'm not sure how familiar we are with that, the ICAT program itself is basically trying to get folks to not use force if possible. And so by taking that time, the longer time that the officer can take, the likelihood of force or anything beyond a level 1, a takedown to the ground, the handcuffing, is pretty high the longer that we're taking. So the whole idea, one of the major ideas of the ICAT program is to have the officer create as much time as possible to give them time to think about it. And like Officer Horvath said earlier, get maybe a second or third outboard brain in there with us to all come up with a solution that's positive. So the idea is to have less force by using the ICAT program. We don't have stats on it yet since we just pretty much finished the training, so I don't have any stats yet.
On that note, I can tell you that the continuum doesn't, we haven't published a continuum that looks necessarily any different. From having compiled statistics on the use of force since like 2015, as Officer Freitag said, we don't have those stats yet, but there is a section of one piece of the uses of force that we do look at in depth every year, and that's the use of taser. And we've examined, and again, to go back to your point, sir, it is 4 hours, but it's not just those 4 hours. The context of it being that over the past several years, we've hit on a lot of these different concepts. And as the commander said, now we have an acronym because PERF has rolled this training out. And so we've been able to look at some of those specific uses of force and ask those questions. And this has shown up in ongoing training for officers for the past several years, asking those critical questions of, okay, what you did may have been reasonable under the law, but could it have been done differently? And then showing those videos. And that was also kind of a front-loaded thing before we did ICAT. We did a couple of sections of ongoing training for officers in which we played videos and we said, okay, under the letter of the law, this was a reasonable, so therefore legal use of force. It was reasonable under our policy, but let's discuss how might we have looked at this differently or approached it differently or talked to people differently. So in in-service sessions with officers, and we generated those conversations with the takeaway being, okay, well, this happened in this other jurisdiction. We didn't show any of our own videos, but this happened in this jurisdiction, because it's easier to get officers to have an opinion about other departments, and they'd say, well, what I would have done or what we could have done or how this could have been differently, and so to talk those things out, to put that bug in officers' ear from the get-go. And again, 4 hours of training, but it's been front-loaded by years, literally, of aspects of this before we rolled out the ICAT itself this year.
Any other
I think there was something really important in that statement that you just said about it's easier for other officers to go ahead and critique other departments and/or other cities, for example. But to Mary's point, what are we doing to combat that type of culture that that silent blue line, or whatever they call it?
Sure.
Stuff. Like, what are we doing to make sure that we are that we are setting up, officers to be able to actually step up and not be choked out?
Sure, so I guess maybe I should have made the distinction, in an in-service environment with anywhere from 50 to 100 officers in there, it's difficult to generate discussion. I've presented to everything from high school to college to undergrads to graduate students to the medical professionals to legal professionals. Cops are by far the worst to present to, and they're the least talkative to get into discussions. I would say there is an incredible difference between discussion in an in-service or ongoing training environment and what actually happens. Of all the travel that I've done throughout the U.S., dealing with other police departments and other agencies, large and small, one of the most unique things about Columbus is that there's not nearly the, oh, you're a cop, okay, anything flies type of attitude. For whatever reason, it's different here. I would like to think it's training, but to say that we show other people's videos or other agencies' videos, that's just a matter of generating good discussion. But I would say that there is a definite difference between the discussion piece and the ability to act on it piece. So if I gave the impression that we can't show our own videos because people don't want to say anything, that's not the case at all. It's just a discussion point, to be completely honest with you.
And I just have one more question. Your training department here in Columbus, how diversified is it?
Not enough.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you so very, very much for coming today and sharing with us. And again, thank you for your service that you provide every day. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is the Inspector General.
I just wait. I wasn't sure if you wanted to do a break or not. Good afternoon. I wanted to start off, good afternoon. I just wanted to take a quick moment, if I could, and let you know that my mom is here. I just wanted to introduce her to the board. Mom? Just stand up. This is Miss Dudley. Yeah, I told her to be prepared that I was going to put her on the spot. I just wanted to introduce her. Again, good afternoon. Let's start off. Maybe I should do the click too. Okay, first thing I want to do, just a brief agenda, is to introduce our executive assistant today. Also, I'll go over some of the department updates, department goals for July, and at the end, if there's any questions that the board has. Start off with our executive assistant is his name is Nathaniel Simon, but he likes to be called Nate, and I wanted him to give a brief introduction of himself to the board.
Good afternoon, Chair Jackson, members of the board. My name is Nate Simon. I'm originally from Cincinnati, and I went to The Ohio State University where I studied political science and I minored in public policy. Following that, I obtained over 7 years of administrative experience working as a legislative aide at the State House for then State Representative Denise Driehaus, and I followed her to the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners, where I served in her office as Deputy Chief of Staff. While in these positions, I gained an extensive knowledge of constituent casework, also community partnerships and outreach, working to make sure that we were present in all 49 jurisdictions throughout the county, and making them aware that we were partners in all the work that we did. One of the most notable things we did, we worked for the Sheriff's Department to obtain body-worn cameras. worked with the Office of Reentry to address issues of recidivism in the jail. And we also worked to expand what was called the quick response teams. That was in the Coleraine Township area of Hamilton County. And the quick response teams were tasked with working to help individuals with addiction to get them out of the cycle of going to jail and instead getting them into treatment. I also have extensive experience with ethics laws and sunshine laws, which I think will be crucial to ensuring trust with the community and accountability as well. But I also want to take this time to thank Inspector General Hendricks, Deputy Inspector General Blunt, and Tammy Bethea for this opportunity. I look forward to working for the department and serving its mission. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So just briefly, we still have a couple more staff positions that we'll be hiring. We'll be hiring our executive secretary, which will handle all board-related items. So they'll be replacing Colleen, but right now Nate will be replacing Colleen until our executive secretary gets aboard. So she'll be the person that the board will be in contact with as far as handling anything board-related. I'll start saying that. We have an in-person interview with our secretaries tomorrow. So we prayerfully will have them aboard very soon. Our community relations coordinator, we've got a lot of applications. We're reviewing those right now. Tentatively, I would like to start doing some virtual interviews in the next week, and then we'll go on with our process of doing our in-person interviews and selecting them. We will be hiring another investigator, so that we will be posting. A lot of this information, I normally put it out there because if anybody is listening, then they'll know that some of these positions will be posted. So we will be looking for, again, another investigator, and that one position will be posted very soon. Getting into our staff training, just wanted to say what was completed. So real briefly, I won't go over everything, but charter review, victim engagement, trauma, criminal investigations, Fourth Amendment, search and seizure, along with the FOP contract, that was Article 8. Our investigators did some ride-alongs. We also had a class on ABCs of policing. That has all been completed. So it's been an aggressive training month for my staff for June. Also, some of what we still have pending is our implicit bias and cultural competency. So I think we should be finishing that, or maybe within the next couple of weeks. Next, talking about our office location. So the renovations have started. We're looking at a completion date of August 13th. Of course, it'd be nice for that to be sooner, but that's kind of how it looks. So right now, our temporary space is going to be 150 South Front Street. Definitely making that open for, like, again, for the citizens that are watching. When it comes to our case management system, that has been installed. Our training will be July 8th and 9th, so that's this week on the case management system. We're excited about that. Been working with the Matrix group over the last month of June, and that's just critiquing and fine-tuning the case matrix system, the case management system, to accommodate the needs that we have for our office. Community outreach program, we're working with the Saunders Group. We do have some literature that we're just reviewing. Again, still working with Mary as far as with the board to try to put together some meetings with the commissions. I'm still dealing with the Department of Neighborhoods. They're going to give me that list. We're going to try to put all of the meetings together. We'll be putting a list out there for everybody who wants to attend the meetings. We're still working on that. It's just, we're getting into the summer, and so a lot of different meetings are starting to may not be meeting for August. But we will be putting that list together, and, Nate will be putting that information out there. We'll put a list. Anybody that wants to attend the meetings can sign up for that, especially once we start getting all of our dates and everything. And as other community engagement programs are coming on, so making sure that everybody has the opportunity to attend that. July the 11th, we are ready. So citizens know July 11th, we are operational. We will begin to receive citizen complaints. The office location will be our temporary location, which is, again, it's going to be 150 South Front Street. Our hours of operation are going to be 9 to 5. We will accept in-person citizen complaints at any time. Any citizens that want to come out and fill out a citizen complaint, we will accept at any time during business hours. Appointments will be required for citizens that want to meet with the case managers. And that's simply because the case managers may not necessarily be in the office because they're going to be working. So if a citizen wants to meet with the case manager, they're going to need to make an appointment for that. They can call our office. If they want to meet with the case manager to get updates on their case, they just need to make an appointment for that. All of, sure.
Moment. And I learned this the hard way last week when I came down to your office to visit with you. I don't know where I've been, but I missed the whole thing about no parking meters. So I'm on Front Street just looking for a meter. This does, and I shared this with Ms. Hendricks. I am concerned for our citizens, and coming downtown, and maybe they're like me, they were just oblivious. The whole process of getting the app, et cetera. I want us to make sure that whenever someone calls the office or whatever, that we make them aware of something that I think is still pretty new. And I find that as a challenge, potentially, for individuals who want to come to the office and complete a complaint. Just something that I think we should be very specific when we are communicating with individuals who want to come to the office.
Absolutely, thank you.
Or is that, okay.
So I just kind of wanted to go over just how to file a complaint. So citizens understand there are many ways that they can file a complaint. They can file the complaint, again, in person in our office anytime if they want to do that during business hours. They can also file a complaint in person at the board meeting. So if a citizen wants to come to a board meeting, they can do that. We will have an investigator here that will take the complaint. They can file the complaint on our main line if they want to call. We will answer the phone, obviously, and there will be someone there that will take the complaint. Anyone will take the complaint. There's a hotline. It's a recorded hotline. They can call the hotline if they want to file a complaint, leave any information. We will take the complaint. We'll even get back with them. There is our website. So we have the dig@columbus.gov is another way that a citizen can file a complaint with our office, along with our website. Our website will have a complaint form on there. It will have a hard copy if they want to print that out, fill out the information, and email it to us or mail it to us. Also, on the website is going to be another smart form in which they can just go to the website, fill out the information, and that's another way they'll be able to file a complaint with our office. So this is just, and you have a copy of the form. So this is just the hard copy form that citizens will be able to fill out if they come to our office in person. It has 2 disclaimers on there that we thought is important, just so that if anyone is filing a complaint that they are aware that it is public record. Also that they are aware if they file any type of false complaint, and information if they want to file an anonymous complaint. And that language is taken from the FOP, so they are aware of the information and everything that we are trying to obtain. And if they file an anonymous complaint, just the additional information that we're going to need to be able to validate the complaint in which we're doing our research. Sure.
Should this form include anything about the timeline to file things? Like, should that be printed on here anywhere? Like, you have 30 days from the time of complaint or something like that?
That information is not on there. I do know that when it comes to our website, that along with that, we're going to be posting information specifically on the website because we didn't want to make the form so convoluted that people might not want to. But the website is going to have information that will tell them when you file a complaint, you know, that it has to be within 90 days of the incident. It's also going to give them information about knowing that once they file the complaint, our investigators will get in contact with them. But we're going to have some more detailed information, but it will be on the website.
All right, thank you.
So I just put the chart up there again, just in case anybody had any questions. Really, it's just understanding that once you file a complaint with our office, that complaint, all complaints, it doesn't matter how we're getting that complaint, whether it's in person, website, whether they're mailing it, everything will be put into our case management system. And that is how we will be tracking all of the complaints that are filed with our office. This is also how we're going to be able to report any information about the complaints we get, the investigations that were open, the type of complaints that we're getting, and how we're being able to report all of that information to the board. All of that information will go into our case management system. Again, letting you know once we get the complaints are going to be reviewed so that the citizens also know when we review the complaints, if we have enough information to conduct the investigation, it will go into an investigation in which we will conduct. If the complaint is closed, it might be closed for insufficient information. The complaint can also be referred to another agency, and that's just if it does not fall within our jurisdiction or our authority. And that's just knowing that all complaints that are filed with our office, that we just have the jurisdiction to investigate allegations of misconduct or excessive use of force involving the Division of Columbus Police. We don't investigate anyone outside of that. And that we're an administrative agency, so we don't conduct criminal matters. Criminal matters will have to be forwarded to another agency. Going right back into the investigation process, again, once we get the complaint will be assigned to an investigator. Once the investigator gets the complaint, their job will be to notify the complainant. So complainants understand the investigator will notify you. They're going to notify you within 48 hours because they need to talk to you just to get any additional information regarding the complaint. If there's any additional documents, information, video recording that you need to get to that investigator, so they'll be able to grab all that information. Also, letting the complainant know that they are the ones that's investigating the case. The investigators will follow up with a letter. It's just our documentation to be able to follow up to the complainant to say, again, we talked to you, we're the person that is going to be handling the case, and please, if for some reason your phone number changed or address change or any information change, let us know so that we'll be able to contact you. It talks about an action plan. These are some of the documents that the board member will see when they're looking at the package. The action plan is really the outline for when the investigator gets the case, that they're outlining their plan of action. That might change a little bit sometimes, but that will change based on the information that they're getting from the complainant, and it might change a little bit when they're doing the investigation if they find that there's some other things that they need to look at. But this is really the outline of everything that they're going to be doing and looking at in the investigation. And then again, they'll get into conducting the investigation. Once the investigation is done, they'll prepare a report. The report will be submitted to me. We'll review the report. If the report is approved, then it goes to the board for the board's final review and approval. And what will be doing at that time is working with the subcommittee that will be reviewing the report. So that's something that you guys will, keep saying you guys, excuse me, but the board will let me know when that group is meeting, and we make sure that we forward those reports to that committee to be able to review them and any questions or anything, so that we make sure it's in a timely manner, so that once you review that and you go before the main board to submit all of those reports to the board for approval. So we'll definitely be working on that process with you. But that's just to kind of give you the outline if anyone had any questions about that process. Just really brief, this is the action plan. You have a copy of that. Just wanted you to see some of the in-house documents that my investigators will be filling out, and these will be some of the things that'll be in the jacket that you guys will be getting when you're reviewing the report. The Garrity statement, this is something that we submitted to the law department. It's just, not law department, city attorney's office. Law department reminds me where I came from. So it's the Garrity statement. We all know that when our office talks to the officers that we have to give them a Garrity advisement. So this is also a copy of the Garrity advisement that we'll be using, advising the officers of their Garrity rights prior to doing an interview with them. This is a template of the investigation report. This is the outline. You all have a copy of that. This just gives you an outline of the type of report that we will be submitting for the board to be able to review. Department goals. The main goal for July is just being ready, and we are ready. We can start accepting, I think I told you that at our last meeting in June, we're ready. So we can start accepting complaints. We're ready for that. The staff is prepared for that. One of the things for hiring, again, we just have a couple more positions that we're hiring, but again, we are doing some in-person interviews for our executive secretary starting tomorrow. We have our applications already that we're reviewing for our community relations coordinator. So I envision we should have that person in place within the next 30 days, hopefully by the next board meeting. Training has been aggressive. The last bit of training, again, is the implicit bias and being trained on the matrix system, which is our case management system. And we're doing that training, but I've also arranged for us 6 months out after this, we're going to get trained on it again, because there's a lot of stuff that we're going to be learning. And so, just want to kind of critique all of that and get that extra training. And other thing is community outreach, just really want to be aggressive as getting out there and talking to more community leaders, doing more community meetings, and it's more important now since we're open, and that's going to be our goal for July. Are there any questions? I know I went through everything really fast, but if there's any questions.
Are there questions?
Or any questions about any of the forums that that you have? Okay,
I don't think so. So thank you.
thank you.
Chair Jackson, before you finish, I have to step out for a meeting, but I'll be right back.
Back by 4 o'clock. Okay.
Thank you.
And that light just appears to be exceptionally bright today. That's why the shielding of my eyes. Okay. You're up.
Okay. So an update for the Community Engagement Committee. So the decision, since the IG and the CRB are going to be meeting with the community in tandem, I met with the IG twice the month of June. We had a general meeting. Our first meeting was general, and it was a decision. We talked about who we were going to meet with, what our goals were going to be, and it was basically a discussion the same that our community engagement group committee had discussed from our meetings that we had, the 5 of us. The second meeting was June 8th, and the IG was kind enough to include me with she was meeting with the Gail Saunders media group, and she included me, and I was pleasantly surprised when I found out that Ms. Saunders would be developing the brochure and the materials and helping us with the statement, and because I thought that our group was going to be doing all of this work. And but she's going to be and she was so kind, Ms. Saunders, and so she'll be helping out here. And Ms. Ross had put together all the commissions, gave me a group with all the 21 commissions, the 2 civic associations, and the names and the contacts, phone numbers, everything. So I gave a copy to the IG, and then the IG wanted me to get 10 that she thought that I thought we should get started with those. And now she's checking with the Department of Neighborhoods, and this is where we've stopped at this particular, so we're working on that. Then as far as the churches are concerned, I asked that the 2 pastors we start out with 3 churches from both pastors, and I've got those, and then I'll be talking to the IG about those. And then I got in touch with Mr. Abdi Sufi, and he is with the New Americans program, because as the chair, and as you indicated, we should get with the ethnic neighborhoods also. And he is such a good man, and he's going to work with us, all we have to do. And I believe that the IG has also been in touch with him. And her outreach has been, from what I'm hearing, has been extensive also. So at this particular time, we did have a Zoom meeting that we were going to have with our group, but that's when I lost my internet, when we had that mess. But we'll get together. I'm just trying to get all the paperwork done. But there are 200 neighborhoods in Columbus and 900,000 people in our central Ohio area. I was surprised with all this work. But anyway, so at this particular time, what we will do, and this was also, you had this suggestion, when we get all this put together, then I will forward an email to Colleen, and she will send it out to the board. And everyone can indicate when the meetings are set up with the commissions, because they meet at different times, and everyone will volunteer when they want to go, whatever group, whichever commission, whatever church that you are interested in. And if there's a particular reason why you'd want to go to this one, just shoot me an email or a text message, and so that I can, what I'll do then is I will choose, we'll have one person from the IG's office, unless you want more, we'll talk, and then maybe 2 or 3 from the board, and I will pick one from the committee, unless people from the committee can't go for some reason, and then some of the volunteers who choose to go. All right? And that's, if anyone has any suggestions, anything that you want to give me, I welcome them. So I'm thinking this is how we'll start. And since this is a work in progress, we're all working together to figure it out. So I think we're pretty good here. Okay?
Questions? Concerns?
Well, I just have one comment. I know you mentioned the various area commissions, and I think also, in addition to that first round, we might want to be intentional about engaging youth groups somewhere at some point throughout this process, because as we know, they have a lot of involvement with Columbus Division of Police, given, everything that is going on right now. And so maybe as part of that first group, if we can kind of brainstorm some good youth groups or some organizations that we can go out to that taps into that population as well.
Can you give me an example of what you're talking about?
Yeah, so the area commissions are usually adults, right? And they're a very homogenous group. You're going to get old people at the area commissions because they don't have anything else better to do. Kids, you're probably going to find them at youth organizations, sports camps, rec centers, things like that. And so I just think that as part of the plan, we need to be very intentional about reaching out to the youth population, because so many times they are overlooked. And so I just want to make sure that they also know we have an inspector general here. If they have any kind of interaction with law enforcement and they think they want to file a complaint, here is the avenue in which they can do it, and they have that information, and we provide that information so it comes directly from us.
There are also a number of nonprofits where their clients are primarily youth.
Yeah, like We Are Legacy U is a good one. Think, Make, Live Youth. There, the list goes on and on. But we can talk about that. And I know you've been working with Attorney Ross. She also has some inroads with some youth groups as well.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments? Well, thank you for all of that hard work. Now is a good time for us to take our 15-minute break. So we will resume at 3:35. Our meeting. I didn't want to cut off this conversation at this end of the table. It sounded interesting. Next on the agenda is the appointment of review committees. And so Brooke and I had a conversation and decided that we're going to have 3 review teams. Better to be safe. And so Team 1 will have Brooke Burns, Dr. Jones, and Pastor Nathan. Team 2 will have Kyle Strickland, Reverend Tatum, and Mary Younger. Team 3 will have Willard McIntosh, Mark Fluharty, and Aaron Thomas. And sir, you get a bye this time around.
Okay.
As do I, although I do plan on attending meetings. So, Colleen, did you get all of those? Okay, good. And I reached out to the National Association for Civilian Oversight of Law Enforcement. I literally left a voicemail, I think, last Wednesday or Thursday, and no one has called me back. So I'm going to call again. There might be an email. I was thinking that they might have, thinking about the review teams, and we talked about this, do the review teams need any training as they begin to review the work of the Inspector, General coming to us, and thought that they might have some best practices that we could gather, from them. This is also the organization that has that training in September that has been mentioned, although I need to talk to someone beforehand. We are not a member at this time. I don't have any of those kinds of, details, but we'll follow up. I was approached, and many of you may know her, by Tracy Maxwell Hurd, who is the executive director of of what we call MAC, and she wanted the board, or me representing the board, to sign on for a grant application community-based approaches to prevent and address hate crimes proposal plan. I declined. I said, first of all, I would not do something like that without conferring with the board, and the board only meets, once a month. But it then also led me to thinking, and I honestly don't know. I mean, so we are this separate board, and whether or not under any city guidelines, if we would have the authority to do that particular type of thing. And so I was going to probably turn to the city attorney's office, to share this with them, and just to find out what the situation is. And even beyond that, I think that the board would need to have a discussion about whether or not we want to use our name for that particular type of activity. So it was just the first time that I had been approached, by anyone, and it left me certainly with more questions than anything else. And I see some nodding of heads. You have some thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, totally apart from our legal authority, whether we could do it, the question would be whether it would be wise to do it and to begin to engage in advocacy work of any kind on any particular issue when you're, we've repeatedly said we're a quasi-judicial board, which suggests a certain kind of independence and neutrality and a posture in the community of where we want to find ourselves. And so we may individually all say, yes, we would personally like to sign whatever, but as a board, is that something that we really want to find ourselves doing?
Other thoughts?
Yeah, I'd have to have a lot of information on what that actually would entail and what signing on actually means. First, whether we could even do it is the real question as the board. And I would be really cautious about doing anything in addition to this until we're up and running efficiently before we would even think about wanting to branch out.
Anyone else?
I would also add, so I was approached as well for TAPS to partner on with something
okay.
similar. And it was a little bit of a hesitation as well because, number one, I didn't really understand the scope of what, we were asked to do. But then also, I just thought that would kind of open up,
That can of worms?
yes, that can of worms, and, other requests may come in, and then we have to individually review each proposal to see if it even aligns with the work and the scope of the things that we are doing. And so for that reason, for TAPS, I think I also declined. But I think for the board, for any additional, requests that come in like this, it's kind of going down a slippery slope if we start, because then, if there's one that we say yes and another we say no, then we're being inconsistent to the community and what their requests are. And I don't think we want to just go down that road with doing that. I do know that MAC is doing some great work, but I did pause because on the request that came for TAPS, the Civilian Review Board was listed on there. And I was like, this is interesting. So I'm glad you actually brought it up today because it provided a little bit more clarification.
This very proposal that I'm talking about had our
Yeah, the
name on it?
same one. Yeah, I received an email request for it as well. And it had
It had under potential partners.
yes, potential
Yes,
partners there
yes.
listed.
Well, I spoke with Ms. Thompson. She's the program project manager, and I declined.
Okay.
So and I think now I will go back to make sure that our name has been removed. So in terms of going forward, I see a couple of things. We could just say we're not going to entertain any requests, and I'm absolutely okay with that. I don't know if I need to have this board actually take an action on that now, or should we give more? And again, not to this one. how would you like the chair to move forward in this area?
I would like it for us to, you know, I have no issue with that, but I do have an issue with us spreading out beyond what our creation was for.
That's fine. Anyone else?
I would agree with that as well. And I think with grants, they become really tricky. And these requests for proposals, they become very specific about what partners are going to be doing, what are the expectations of them. And I think just to go down that we are going to be taking on a lot more than what our capacity even is, especially come June 11th or July 11th, I think, complaints are going to start coming in. We're going to start reviewing them and all that. So I think we're going to have our hands pretty full with the work for the Civilian Review Board. And I know, I'm just a little hesitant with just moving in that direction as well.
I am very comfortable with all of the comments that have been made.
Would it be, I don't know what we need to do, but would it help to entertain a motion that we not entertain outside requests so that we actually have a policy as opposed to an informal thing? Would that help you?
I think that would be very helpful.
Before we do anything, can we find out the legality of whether we should even be having this conversation with the city attorney's office outside of our scope of what the charter is?
I'm sorry, so, Mark, are you requesting that I speak with Mr. Tobias and to raise that question with him?
Yes, before we make a motion to do anything, can we find out whether or not
Okay.
it's even feasible?
So I'll put it back on our next agenda.
Can I make a comment about that as well? I'd like to also really be clear about what we're saying no to, because I feel like when saying no to any outside assistance is kind of like an umbrella covering of this, and I don't particularly care for that, but I would like to be very clear about if we make a policy, what exactly is the level of outside help that we're saying no to? If when we draft the policy, if that could be very, very clear.
I think this particular request spoke to a grant proposal and partnering on a grant proposal.
Yes.
And so I think we can make very clear language about that, but we might not even be able to do it if,
Right.
the city attorney comes back and says that wasn't even in the charter, so it's beyond the scope.
Right.
So let me start there.
Yeah, because I think, our name will have a lot of value to a lot of different organizations. As you see, they'll start to reach out because, hey, the Civilian Review Board is a partner. It makes me very uncomfortable.
Okay, all right.
I might just add that whenever we reach the ending point of this, maybe the proposal should be that we put in our bylaws whatever the rule is for future iterations of the board.
Good idea.
I'll have a conversation with Robert.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Before I get to the next item on the agenda, which is the August meeting, is there anything else to come before the board from any board member?
Madam Chair, just to step back on the review committees. I know that we have assigned committees. I don't understand how the committees are going to work. Will we be assigned cases individually, or will we each be reviewing the same cases?
The group of three?
Yeah, no, we'll have three groups, right?
Yes.
So is all three groups reviewing the same case?
No.
So
That
we
is-
will get cases referred to our group?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, and then,
Thank
of
you.
course, you will come to the full board.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
No, but, no. Anticipating a body of work that will require, or at least we decided we wanted to be prepared if there were that many cases, we would have it in place as to who would serve on each committee, okay? If there isn't anything else, I'm sorry, yes.
I know we finished our training, but I just, and I'm not sure, I know we have a training committee, but I saw some things that I thought might be interesting maybe down the road. I saw that the cameras, have been updated for CPD, and I thought maybe down the road, there could be somebody that could come and update us on what they're doing with, like,
Are you talking about body cams?
yeah.
Okay.
Yes. And then I also saw that there's something called the Dialogue with the Community. There's a new unit within CPD, and it engages at times, dialogue with community, and they engage at times where there's a crisis or something that goes on. I just saw like the end part on the news, and I thought it might be something that might be good for us to know what it is that CPD is doing in this area. Dr. Jones might know about this. Have you heard about this? It's called the Dialogue with the Community. No?
No, I was just asking Brooke, because I was wondering if that was the dialogue that I think it was the chief had with community members, or if this is something different.
Something
I don't
different.
know.
And I wish I could, I wrote it down, and then
I know what you're talking about. They advertised it at the MPHC session on Friday, step show thing, and it's the conversation between the mayor and the chief of police. And so they started advertising it 2 weeks ago.
Well, I should do more research myself, but it was called Dialogue with the Community, and it seemed really impressive. It was on the news, and they have officers that would come to different organizations. I'll look into it myself. I thought I wrote it. I hate it when I take notes late at night and then can't remember what I did. And then the last one is, and this is a shot spotter, where officers, they try to determine where a shot is fired, and
And we've had those for a while.
yeah, but it's controversial in a way, and I thought, if we're going to be reviewing cases, if this comes up, some people believe in it, and some people think that it's hocus pocus science, and I know that contractors love it because they can make money off of it. And I'm not sure, if we're going to be reviewing cases, if this is used, this might be something that we might want to have maybe a half-hour training on or something.
There's a lot of articles about that, the shot spotter technology.
Yeah, the shot spotter technology. Some believe hocus pocus, some believe in it, so. Okay, that's it. Yes.
Board member Younger, I just wanted to, with regards to the body-worn cameras training, I was already in the progress of setting that up for our staff. So if you would like, I can just have Commander Baden, who is the CPD contact for that and most knowledgeable, so I can ask if he can come to a board meeting and give that training to everybody.
Yeah, there's a training committee here that, yeah.
We did a little research, so apparently CPD did launch a dialogue team, but right now there are only 2 officers. So we might want to do a little bit more research on that. That might be an opportunity to get them in here to talk about what they do. This is very, very new.
Very new?
Yeah, like
Okay.
June 22nd new.
Like what?
June 22nd new.
Oh, okay.
Very new.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, okay. Anything else? We have been conscientious, and we have met monthly since the beginning. And I was thinking it might be nice to give ourselves a little break and to not have a meeting in August. Is there anyone who objects to us not meeting in the month of August?
Is there a motion called for? Because I move.
There's a motion, a second.
Second.
All in favor, raise your hands. Actually, let me be both of them. Okay, so we will not have a meeting in August. You know, I do chat with the Inspector General weekly and get written reports. If something, you know, should come up, then I would certainly let the board know. Okay? With that, motion to adjourn. All in favor? Thank you. We're adjourned.
Thank you.
Great.